We don't have time for feedback from every group. I'm sure you've had some excellent conversations. I hope that it's got you thinking, and I hope that these conversations carry on. But it would be really good to hear from a few of the groups, if that's okay. So who would like to give a little bit of feedback from your conversation? Who's going to be brave and go first? Yes, sir. Do you want to come and use the microphone? I'm sorry if I'm strict. Tell us what you were talking about and what your thoughts are.
What talking about? One idea that we talked about, or mentioned rather. It would be a good idea, Father Ruben, that periodically, not every month, no, periodically or sometimes we have a meeting of those who are practitioners to share good practice. We did some today, but if it is on a regular basis, I think it will help and encourage people to not just hold a regular prayer meeting, but prayer space, but to develop the idea, you know, because there are so many ideas on the internet, but then the local flavor, I think we can improve on that.
Great idea. Do you want to pick that up?
Oh, yes. Thank you. And at the moment we are sharing some stories in the newsletter, and also last year we did a good practices seminar. Let's continue to do that, and thank you for the feedback. Yes.
That's great. It's a really good idea, learning from one another. Who's next? You are. I can see you. Go on, you shout then. Go.
And we have discussed the first question. We said that as a follow-up, we can work with youth groups, and for example, in St. Martin's, there's a particular youth group. In the break, they are doing a collage with students. The students are welcome to join in front of the chapel, and they also discuss and speak about certain things, and this obviously will help the students to grow. And if something will pop up, and it is very important to break the situation. I mean, to see what is going on, they can speak to other referrals. And we also discussed about the problems about lessons as well, the load of lessons. And something which helps is that you do a prayer space in the lesson as well.
Yeah.
For example, the last few minutes of the lesson, and you can relate it to the lesson, to the theme as well. We also spoke that it is important to see the development of the child, and also what is truly the spirituality of children, children's spirituality as well. And you can use the symbols used in the prayer spaces as a focal point, yes, in class. For example, we mentioned that sometimes, especially in state schools, there is no altar, for example. So you use the symbols. For example, they did an activity with there are certain symbols. The symbols are very important. They're one of one of the characteristics aspects of the spirituality, and they can build an altar. We can build an altar with the symbols used. If there is no altar.
Basically, it's passing on, and letting the children themselves, take the lead.
Yes.
Yeah? Because I told, my colleagues here that, for instance, in my case, I had a job, and Father Ruben knows, to have a chapel, to actually celebrate Mass in the particular school I serve as a spiritual director in. And only I should think, less than 2 weeks ago, the Archbishop happened to be doing his pastoral visit in our area, and I took the opportunity, or we took the opportunity to have the actual chapel blessed, that we would have the seal, but it's important, as the lady said, to have the children themselves take the lead, take the lead, and as you quite rightly said, throughout the seminar.
They do. I told them, for example, last year, during Christmas, 3 students prepared 3 prayer spaces activities during Christmas. They came in front of the assistant and myself and I with 3 activities we can use in prayer spaces. It's amazing. They know that it is important to relate to God, to relate with others, with nature. They are spiritual. Children are spiritual. We need to help them. We are companions.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. That's fantastic feedback, wasn't it? Yeah. Really good. Yeah. There's been lots of classes in schools in England where the class teachers have taken some of the ideas from the prayer space and maybe turned one of their walls into a worry wall and stuck post-it notes, and so that the students are learning the language of creative reflection and prayer and incorporating it into their everyday life. So yeah, really brilliant stuff. Let's a couple more bits of feedback. Come on. You weren't just talking about what you were going to have for lunch, were you? So,
No, it's okay.
yes, come on, we can get the microphone.
Thank you.
Sir.
We tackled the third question,
Great.
How can we make prayer space work well, etc. And because especially 2 persons of the group, from this group, they work in a school where they have multi-faith and multicultural reality. We thought that, yes, these prayer spaces have to use the language, themes, ambience, atmosphere, and symbols which direct the personal experiences of the kids themselves in order to search for those aspects which unite the kids on a personal level. That's basically.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, symbols are really important. They don't have to be familiar religious symbols. Jesus does all kinds of things, drawing in the dirt. We get symbols of stones being picked up and all sorts of things throughout Scripture, don't we? I remember when we had our first training session here back in January 2014, and Father Paul Chakuti saying this beautiful thing. He talked about, you guys, in a Catholic tradition, there's some great sacred, valuable things. The sacraments are deeply important. And he said, but we need to rediscover that all of life is sacred. And that there are sacred moments. God is speaking to us in all sorts of different ways as well. And so let's encourage these children and young people to discover, to see God everywhere they look, as you saw in that post-it note earlier, and to use all kinds of different ways to communicate with God. Let's have final little bit. Go for it.
I would like to suggest that after these prayer spaces, there's a lot of faith values, a lot of notes, and a lot of things that have been expressed. And maybe we validate at the end of the session, and that's great. But I think since we are in schools and there's a school community, that as a school, this thing is validated. So, for example, maybe in some of our schools we celebrate a Mass or something, that all of these things can be presented during the Mass. That it validates with individuals. This was my contribution, my prayer went somewhere, there has been a response or something. And as we said earlier on, that these symbols can become those landmarks in the school. So we decorate with them, and I was suggesting that we use them in the classroom. It can be something that, so I think another thing is that when you are doing these prayer spaces, think of the second step, that, we tend, when we're doing something, we do it big, and when everybody brings something, everything is really scattered. Think maybe smaller, more concentrated. Yeah, they are concentrated eventually. Concentrated, so you can really make good use of them, because some creative stuff can look really messy, and it gets annoying. But if it is contained and well done, they become true symbols. And I think that's very important for the kids, because I think what you do with the stuff speaks more to the kid afterwards. If you get all of this and they see it all wrapped up in a bin afterwards, that's what I meant by being consecrated.
Yeah, that's great. My advice is always to be simple with your prayer spaces. You don't have to have huge creative installations. The first few prayer spaces I ran, it really was post-it notes, torn up cardboard. My daughters knew when I was about to run a prayer space, because all the bean bags and the lamps disappeared out of their bedrooms when I took them to the school. It was just simple, everyday stuff. And I think that helps these children and young people to discover that prayer is simple and everyday. And so it doesn't need to cost a lot. It doesn't need to be spectacular. Keep it simple and real. And the other thing I would say, when you finished your prayer space, even if it was just a couple of days or a week, take a little bit of time to evaluate, to look at what was written on the post-it notes. What are the worries in this school? What are the big questions? Are there some themes here? Are there some common themes here that as a school community we might need to do something about? How can we serve these children better in an ongoing way? So evaluate, learn from the prayer spaces. As you were saying, let's allow the children to be our teachers in some of this. Let's let them guide the way a little bit in terms of their spiritual development. I want to say a huge thank you for your warm welcome to me. Thank you very much. It's come up a little bit already. I really want to encourage you to journey together. Some of you have already run prayer spaces, some of you will get started. Learn from one another. If that might be a monthly meeting or a quarterly meet up to share stories, to display some of what you've done together. It might be email conversations. But you do lean on Father Ruben and Silvana, who've been championing prayer spaces for these last few years. Let them help you to develop a bit of a network. But thank you very much. I'm going to hand back to this man.